From now on, we will proceed with fourth week lecture. This week, we will focus on the code design topics. Let's move on. Next slide. We will study on following learn objectives. Be aware of features of the code and precaution when designing code. Understand the design process of code. Identify the characteristics of each code type. Identify the type of error in a code. This slide is about code definition. Code is numbers, letters, or symbols used to identify, classify, and arrange data according to the purpose of use. What is the need for code? There is distinguish a large amount of data and classify them into homogeneous groups listed in order. By selecting specific data and easily extracting necessary for organizing file system. Everyone, did you understand what I mean? Code features classified three categories. One is main function category. Second, basic function category, and additional features. Main functions, including classification, identification, arrays. Basic functions is composed of standard deviation simplifications. In additional features, associative encryption and error detections. Main function of code is classification functions. Classification function to group and divide information into data with the same characteristics. Identification functions is a function to distinguishing one thing from another. Arrangement function is a function that can be arranged in a sequence. This slide is a basic function of code. Standard deviation, a function that consistently expresses the type, shape, and size of information according to certain standard. And simplification is a function to simplify the presentation of information. And additional functions, including associative and error detections. Associative is a function that implies the meaning and the meaning of one object to express information in code. Error detection is a function to find wrong information when entering or managing information. This table included in a slide summarized and shown above. And the code design purpose and the characteristics. First characteristic, uniqueness. Uniqueness is the code should be able to cope with 101 via 1, meaning by giving only one code to one object. Classification convenience. It should be possible to classify objects according to their types to show it their purpose. And array efficiency is you should be able to get the desired arrangement. Simplicity characteristics, be able to express a lot of data in a small number of digits, and simplicity, be concise and clear. Next, convenience of maintenance should be easy to maintain. Code must not overlap with other code systems. And code is easy to understand and convenient to use. Also convenient to add and delete. Now, we studied consideration when designing code. Compatibility is a characteristic that ensures that human expectations and computer goals fit. Consistency is a characteristic given in one way. Commonality is a characteristic that both objects have. Systematic is a characteristic that each part is well organized according to certain principles. Extensibility is a characteristic that can continue to work well even in the expansion of functions like changes in the environment. Simplicity code is a simple and clean characteristic without any clutter. Uniqueness is a target's unique trait. And there are some features that are easy to sort. This slide is about conditions when designing code. First, suitable for computer processing, and answer commonality by systematic, must be extensible, must be consistent. There should be simplicity, must be discernible or unique, must be easy to sort. This slide is a type of code. Classification by purpose of codes. Identification code is a code whose main purpose is identification, and which has immutable properties. Classification code that can be systematically classified by classification criteria. Function by classification. We sort sequence code, complete sequence code, block sequence code, decimal classification code, group classification code, and significant digit code, mnemonic code, combined code, final digit code, letter code, and last, numerical alphabetic code. First, sequence code. Sequence code's concept is a serial number code, and it's a representative identification code. How to arrange the data in a certain logical order and assign code accordingly. Advantages. First, simple and easy to understand and easy to code. Can be expressed in small digit. Very easy to add in case of code according to the order of occurrence. Easy to remember due to uniqueness. Suitable when there are few data and little change for a long time. But sequence code have these advantages. Difficult to code when the number of items is large. Inappropriate for classification and manipulation because items do not have common characteristics. It is not possible to insert new data between codes. Inadequate to organize by group because the code itself is not a classification system. Next code is complete sequence code. Complete sequence code that compensate for the shortcomings of sequence code. Make a blank number at regular intervals. How to insert in the middle of new data. Complete sequence code has advantages following. New code can be inserted in the middle of sequential code. Can be used by leaving extra code blank. in case of accidental omissions. Complete sequence code have disadvantages. That is, confused if you have extra code at your fingertips. Now we review block sequence code. How to divide an object into several blocks according to common characteristics in advance, and to give meaning by numbering each block in order, also called it block code. Block code has some advantages. Can display more groups with fewer digits than other codes, and very easy to add as spare code is available. Easy classification and aggregation by common characteristics, but also has these advantages. Each section has a preliminary code, so the program processing is complicated. Each section has a spare code, so the code is wasted. The program becomes complicated, and the number of digits is long, and the number of groups increase. Next slide is shown decimal classification code. Decimal classification code coding object is divided into left and right. The left part is grouped, and the right part is classified into decimal. How to classify each of them back to decimal and continue to sub-classify as needed. Used for the purpose of organizing books in the library. Decimal classification code has some advantages. Easy to insert or add large amount of data. The range of code can be expanded to infinitely. Easy to arrange or aggregate, but also has disadvantages. Inconvenient to use when the number of rows is large. Machine processing is inconvenient. Difficult determining digit ranks. Next, group classification code. Group classification code classify items into subcategories such as large, medium, and small categories. Code with the lowest digit representing the individual target. Each seed is given each digit is given a specific meaning and is suitable for counting by category. So it is often used when determining agent's code. Group classification code has some advantages. classification function of item and composition of data is clear. Flexible, easy to supplement, most suitable for machine processing, ideal for handling large volume of data. But the number of rows of the item is high, heavy waste of memory space. And we reviews signification digit code. This code is how to directly apply specific physical values such as weight, area, capacity, distance, brightness, volume, and performance related to the item to be coded. It is easy to remember by putting the physical number in the item code, and the same code is mainly used, so it is rarely long. Simple writing of code and easy addition of data. But the number of rows of the item is long and it is difficult to classify and inconvenient to machine processing. And mnemonic code. Mnemonic code is symbolic code. If you look at the code value, the meaning of the object is reflected in the name of the code, so that you can recall what the object means. This code is convenient and content is easy to see by looking at the code, and easy to write code and easy to add data. A long digit and difficult classification. Machine processing is inconvenient. And the combined code is created by combining two or more coded. Combined code that complements the shortcomings of other codes. Therefore, flexibility in code representations and combined code can compensate for defects of various code. But the number of digits in the code increase. Final digit code is that allows you to classify items by adding a single digit to the end of the code when it is difficult to perform the required classification function with the existing code. Letter code is coded abbreviations for symbols or characters that are used customarily or institutionally. Last code is numerical alphabetic code, also called numeric character code. This code that represents one character as a two-digit number according to a certain method. Everyone, did you understand what I mean? Please take a closer look at the picture and reflect on overall meaning. And you have tried to summarize it. This slide is about code error prevention and detections. First of all, error prevention is a precaution to prevent errors when creating input documents. You should have an easy to understand code system. Maintenance of code books. Use color for formatting input documents. And education training. Institutional considerations. Type of errors. Transcription errors has a meaning of error occurred when entering a code by one letter or numbers. Notation example 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But write 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Wrong number has insert. Next error is transposition error. Error caused by changing left and right digit during input. Double transposition error is two or more potential errors occurred. And omission error is an error that was missed and recorded one more digit when entering the code. Also, addition error is recorded by adding one more digit when entering the code. And last, random error is that occurs when two or more errors are combined. Random error occurs without regular rules. Subject of error detections. By human. A human eye reads the code written in the original document and lookups it. A professional checker checks whether the original document has been correctly written. And check for errors by comparing raw documents and monitor sheet. Number 2, check digit inspections. How to automatically check whether it matches the value of the test digit after performing the calculation given by the computer by putting a check digit at the beginning and end of the code. Number 3, check by program. Blank check, mode check, effective range check, control check, auto check. also on. First, blank check. Blank check is examining items that are not entered among input data. Mode check. Mode check is checking the mode or numbers, letters among input data. Range check examines specified range of data items. Minimum range from minimum to maximum. Matching check is checking the data and codes stored in codes and files of input data. Sequence check is checking whether the code of input data is duplicated. Limit check is check whether the input data is within a predetermined ranges. Format check is checking whether letters, numbers, and formats match input data items. Numeric check. If a character other than a number is entered in the entered numeric data items. Total check is how to calculate the sum of a specific data item of input information. Process it with a computer with input information and check whether the result is the same. Blank check examine whether the results are clearly the same as those calculated using a computer, such as comparing and checking the sum of credit and debit on the balance sheet. Size check is if the number of characters in the data field composing the record is correct. Feasibility check is a check that logically confirms that the data is within certain prescribed limits. Relational check. The multiple code in the original document, the related code checks in which data the data items are not independent, and the data items are related to each other. Code check is compare each code with the code in the master file, or check the code for errors by parity check. Echo check is sends the received data back to the sender and compares it with the original data to check for errors. Error control method used when information is transmitted in block units, and the transmission message is divided into appropriately sized blocks to check for errors in the block. Data counter check is the check whether the number of data to be processed by the computer and Number of data processed by the computer are the same. This slide is about maintenance of the code. Necessary of maintenance of the code. It is possible to anticipate problems such as code extinction, addition, and new constructions. Rationalization, efficiency, and clarifications of office work can be made by performing maintenance in accordance with the prescribed regulations. Two conditions is followed: code setting standards and code management standard. Code setting standard are generally written when setting up new code systems. Since the code needs to be added, corrected, and deleted from the time of code setting, in this case, it is necessary to clarify and processing method to prevent confusion of the code book and the code tables. Working contents. Additional registration of code, correction registration of code, revocation of code, storing and organizing the code book and code table. Last slide is about procedure of code design. First step, determination of item to be coded. Item selection, related work, prospect, importance, adaptability is including. Clarifying the purpose of coding. The purpose and clarifying the purpose and determining the three major functions. Identification, verification, confirmation, and alignment. Confirmation of code target. Check the number of items considering changes in target items. Post steps, determining the scope of use. Determining whether the object is a part or all. Next, determination of the period of use. Decide how long to use the code. And analysis of characteristics of code targets. And And then determination of the coding method. The coding method considering the purpose and scope, period, and characteristics. And finally, documentation of code. We create code setting standards and create code tables accordingly. Please take a closer look at the picture and reflect on overall meaning. Have you tried summarizing it? Identify the three major functions of the code: identification, classification, and alignment. Be aware of precaution when designing code. Understand the design sequence of code step by step. Familiarize yourself with the consideration during the code design phase. Among the types of codes, the concepts of sequential code, classification code, decimal code, group classification code, and association code are grasped, and the characteristics of each code are understood. Good job, everyone. Let's finish the study. See you.